We're back. It's Baitman Raw. This is episode 11, and a lot of Jaints are being caught throughout the country, especially on Lake Fork, Major League Fishing. So I'm going to make this really short and sweet because we got a pretty long podcast. But man, shout out to my boy Justin. I catch Jaints Atkins for that 10-8 he caught on Lake Fork yesterday. That dude, I don't care if you catch on spinning gear, bait casting gear, whatever. That is an absolute giant, and it was awesome to see him take the scale sampling of that and release that fish back in the water so she can do her spawning thing. But man, this Major League Fishing event at Lake Fork has been awesome to watch. Now, on with Baitman Raw, I've got a guest on here who's in the kayak community and he's in the YouTube community. And I would say he's kind of on the smaller side of YouTube, but he's got a couple thousand subscribers and he does a lot of gear reviews. And I really respect his opinion because he tells it like it is. And we've become friends over a short period of time. And he's a college football fan, even though he roots for the Georgia Bulldogs. And I'm a Tennessee guy, but you know, he brings up a lot of interesting opinions and points. And so I wanted to have him on Baitman Raw. And also, guys, do me a favor, head over to his channel, subscribe to Yankee Tanker Outdoors. Got all kinds of stuff for hiking, camping, kayak guys. A lot of gear reviews, and he does his reviews the right way. He uses the product's equipment for a while before he gives an honest and informed opinion. His name's Matt Vahle, and he's going to be on here in just a second, but we got to do this. We got to plug the sponsor. We got to plug 6 Cents Fishing. Use my code Baitman. Get 10% off on their website. And if you want to buy a subscription sack, the 6 Cents Premium Sack, use the code Baitman Super 6. You'll get $10 off your first monthly subscription there. And that Baitman spring box, that's available too. A lot of people have been commenting saying, man, I love this box. I love all the stuff I'm getting from 6 Cents. Do me a favor, shop over there anytime and you just want to make a random purchase. Use the code Baitman, 10% off. They allow me to do these videos and always pump me full of new baits that I can get out to you when I can. But enough about me, enough about 6 Cents. Let's talk to Matt Vahle, Yankee Tanker Outdoors. You're really going to like this Baitman Raw. I've got Matt Vahle on the phone. If I mispronounce your last name, Matt, let me know because I am. And I just say stuff how it sounds. But Matt has a YouTube channel. It's called Yankee Tanker Outdoors. And one reason I watch it all the time is because he's got great opinions, whether you agree or not. I'm an outside thinker. I like to discuss stuff. He does all kinds of reviews. He's not really strictly fishing. He does, reviews for, let's just say, hiking equipment, prepping stuff. Who knows? And one time he did feature the Baitman box on there. So I was very excited for that to happen. But Matt, welcome to Baitman Raw.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Uh, it's not very often that I'm friends with someone that's as big as Georgia Homer that you are.
It's not the season. It's not the season that to have this argument. I am originally from Georgia. I grew up in that state until I was probably in the 8th grade. And then my father moved us to New York. And then I went right back down out of high school, back down to the South in Florida and back to Georgia. I did some schooling at a small private university in Florida and did some grad school at University of Georgia. I'm a diehard Bulldog. I'll keep this story short. The first game I ever saw was a University of Georgia football game. My daddy took it. My daddy took me to it, and then the first famous person I ever met was Herschel Walker. So I actually had dinner at a friend's house that I went to elementary school with, and his daddy was an athletic trainer at the University of Georgia, and I had dinner with Herschel Walker when he was still playing for UGA. So that's why.
That's you know what, that's awesome. And even though y'all hadn't won a national title since 1988, I'll be honest. The SEC is better when Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, and the East are going strong because lately it's just been all about Alabama and a little bit of Auburn. But it's going to be interesting with Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss. I'll tell you that.
Oh, and Mike at Mississippi State.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, the Pirate,
yeah, the pirate. Yeah, what's that kid? What's my his? I can't.
Mike
But he's
Leach.
a Mike Leach. He's a great coach, and he's a real air it out kind of guy. So I think his time at Texas Tech really showed that he's got an offense that he likes to throw the ball, and I'm excited to see those two loudmouths go at it.
Oh, absolutely. Make the Egg Bowl fun.
Yeah.
Uh, But for those who don't know, Matt, he's a huge kayak fisherman, and I personally have limited time on kayak. I love getting in the kayak groups. It makes for some fun discussion. Sometimes not so fun because everybody has an opinion. But there's a lot of things going on in the kayak world, and that's kind of the purpose of this Baitman Raw. Want to get in tune with my inner kayak, so Matt, let's just talk about kayak fishing in general. What leads you to want to fish in a kayak? I mean, you're out there in California, you can fish the Delta, Clear Lake, all kinds of stuff. Why for you in a kayak as opposed to a bass boat?
Well, that's a great question because the kayak came out of not having the space to buy a boat and put it at my house. And moorage out here is absolutely ridiculous. And so I moved from Florida to California in 2000. The January 1st, 2014 was my first year out here. When I was living in Florida, I was part of something called Freedom Boat Club, and I don't know if you guys have that out there, but it's basically it's like it's a boat club where you have access to boats, and all you have to do is pay a yearly fee, and you get access to a fishing boat or whatever it may be. So I had that when I was living in Florida,
Mm-hmm.
and when I did my undergrad in Florida, I had buddies that had Makos and stuff like that, and we'd always be out in the salt fishing. So when we moved out here, the last couple of weeks we were living in Florida, I sold all my saltwater gear. I just kind of came to the conclusion that I wasn't going to be fishing for salt. I had never fished for bass a day in my life.
Really?
And yeah, so we move out here. We moved to this area called Folsom, and we were living in this house. And right across the street was this little pond. And every day I'd see people walking back there with sticks. And I said, what are they fishing for back there? That's not a big enough place to have anything of value. And I stopped this 16-year-old kid, and he basically said, there's largemouth and there's spotted bass in here. And there's also trout. They plant trout in here. And we're talking about a pond. We're not talking about a lake. We're talking about you can do the whole thing in less than 30 minutes. I used to walk my dog around it. And I just kind of just thought the kid was blowing smoke. And what ended up happening was couple days later at sunset, I was walking, the same kid was out there. He pulled a 3-pounder out. So I literally ran down to Sportsman's Warehouse, walked in the door, met this guy named Joe, who ended up becoming a really good friend of mine out here. And I said, all right, set me up with, a spinning setup. Because as a salt guy, I never,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't jig for deep tuna or anything like that. We were going after snooks and reds and stuff like that on the inshore stuff. So I was always a spinning rod guy. And so he set me up with a Fenwick HMG and some loose $69 spinning setup. And I said, where can I go to bass fish besides this little pond by my house? And he just gave me a bunch of places to kind of walk the bank and stuff. And I ended up joining some Facebook pages and started really getting into it. And had a friend out here who lived on a private lake. He took me there. We caught like 40 bass from the shore one day. Long story short, I joined a bass fishing club out here that actually has a rotating co-angler seat. So you join this club,
Mm-hmm.
you basically, there's a monthly tournament. It's a great way for me to meet people. And, candidly, I ended up buying baits off of people off of Facebook groups and meeting them in parking lots at 10 o'clock at night, like it was, we're doing something illegal. And I just kind of fell into the scene.
You
And
know,
then,
it's that's funny because I definitely in my day, back in selling tackle, I would drive and meet people at Walmart parking lots and whatnot, or and obviously they give you a credit card over the phone. They've already paid for it and whatnot. But it was a hustle. So I totally get that. Hey, I buy stuff locally here all the time, and who knows where may end up. Sometimes I'm wondering, man, I hope a cop doesn't think a crack deal's happening. He's going to be really disappointed.
Yeah, exactly. So what ended up happening was the place we were living at, we moved to a new house, and I didn't measure the garage. And when we moved in there, the garage was abnormally short, and it was in a good neighborhood, but I'd have to run it right on my driveway and leave it out every night, and I just didn't want to do that. So I helped a guy out on Facebook who had all of his tackle stolen, and I basically met him and I gave him a bunch of free tackle. He was a younger guy. And in the back of his truck at the time, he had a feel-free lure. And I said, "How is that?" He goes, "Oh, you got to try it. You got to try it." So I went down to this shop called Headwaters and tried one out. And I was like, this makes a lot of sense. And so I just kind of fell into it. And I really started enjoying it. My buddy Lucas took me out on the Delta for the first time. And I it was really just a different kind of feeling from fishing off of a boat or fishing off of the bank, because you were right there when the fish came to the boat, and you weren't netting them. If they weren't big enough, you weren't netting them, and it was just real intimate and it was quiet. And candidly, I'm a real quiet person in my private life. I like to run my mouth sometimes on my 2 cents series, but I'm a private guy when it comes to it, and I'm a quiet guy, not private, but I'm quiet, and so just kind of fell into the kayak space. I met a bunch of people through YouTube that kayak fish. I joined the local kayak circuit, and at the time, this is 2016. At the time, the kayak circuit, local circuit called Yakabas out here,
Mm-hmm.
probably had about 30 guys bass fishing out of kayaks. And they would do monthly tournaments, and it was legit and it was fun. It was like almost like a fish and chill kind of situation. And then something just happened where the sport in our area just went bonkers. And it got to the point where pedal kayaks became really big, and then people were slapping trolling motors. I kind of lost a little bit of my interest in competing in it, because there was a lot of egos going around, and I had fished enough bass boat tournaments out here, some BBT stuff and some, local stuff like I had mentioned before. And those guys had egos, but at the end of the day, they laughed about everything. There were a couple guys in these groups that were just, you know, they were hardcore. They did just were not my kind of guys. And I like a lot of guys in the group, but it's so big now, it's kind of lost its intimacy. So
I would kind of agree with you there, Matt. And again, I'm an outsider, but it seemed like in 2016 I knew about kayak fishing and I knew a little bit about the tournaments. I was becoming friends with guys that were pretty heavily involved in the KBF and other stuff. And believe it or not, there's really not a local tournament scene here on Kentucky Lake. But it seemed about mid 2017, the shit hit the fan,
oh yeah,
and the kayak groups on Facebook blew up and everything. But from what I knew about a kayak fishing, the purist guys were kind of getting left behind, because now you've got uh, pedal drives, which is fine. I'm cool if you want to pedal, you want to use your Hobie or the Jackson drive, whatnot. And then you got the guys, well, I'll just slap a Ultrex on there. And then I'm going to get this other system that propels with a battery and all that. And uh, I'm kind of like, well, that kind of defeats the purpose of a kayak, because what money y'all are putting in this thing, you could go buy a used bass boat for.
easily, easily. And that was one of the things that was attractive to me too. My daughter was born in 2015, and I'm a frugal guy just by nature. I buy things when I need them these days. But that was kind of the other thing too. I'm like, well, I'm not going to go out and drop, 60, or let's just say 20 grand on a used boat. This is practical and it should last me a long time. And it fit my kind of lifestyle at the time. Uh, and yeah, some of these guys are dropping, you drop just $5,000 on the kayak alone. You decide to throw an Ultrex or some sort of trolling motor on it. You kick it up to 7,000. You throw on some fish finders. These guys are throwing on 12-inch screens on little plastic boats. And
No.
it's gotten ridiculous to the point where there's a couple of guys out here and they can do whatever they want. It's just not my style, but
Right.
they've got dual fish finders. I'm like, what are you
Yeah.
doing? Like, what are you doing? Like, your face is a foot from the screen. Like, guys running two fish finders on a boat, it's typically because they got a side scan on one and they've got their eyes and looking forward on the other one, and they're also navigating because they're going 60 miles per hour and they need that capability,
Yeah.
right? And so, or they got one on the back for the co-angler, or they got one at the front for the trolling motor. And I don't understand what's going on. It's become ludicrous to me. And I think one of the things that really was kind of like, I saw the industry or companies and manufacturers kind of jumping the shark was Old Town released a boat this week or late last week that comes with a freaking motor, and
Right.
it's not meant to be a paddling kayak. And kayaking is supposed to be, in my personal opinion, a man-powered, kind of vessel. And so that's either using your hands, using your feet, whatever. And now it's these guys are dropping $6,000-7,000 on boats, and they're powered by batteries that are running large bass boats. And so
Right.
it's one of the things I always used to chuckle about is like, I never thought I'd say I have to charge batteries before I go kayak fishing. That's something you shouldn't have to say.
No, you really shouldn't. I mean, again, I think I agree with you. I think that kind of defeats the purpose. Uh, an interesting thought about that is I'm friends with a guy that he's a hazard material specialist. He's certified and all that. And he was telling me that in, he can't believe they're putting lithium ion batteries in boats because if that plastic case ever gets busted and touches water, it will create a huge explosion. And so he's all obsessed, like, how are they getting away with this and all that? Because, he has to go into these chemical plants and all kinds of stuff. And if he's seen the effects of what happens if a lithium ion battery explodes. I thought it was very interesting. All these guys are going to lithium pros, whether in kayaks or bass boats to keep the weight down. But I had no idea that they were as hazardous as they really are.
They are. And interestingly enough, in my kayak that I'm in now, I'm in a Wilderness 135 radar. It's a 12 and a half foot boat. And my sonar pod, which holds a TI-7, which is huge in my opinion for a kayak, I have a lithium battery in there. And that compartment, I had to go out and buy extra sealant to seal it,
Hmm.
because when I first took it out, I had an old lead sealed in there, because I got a buddy who's sponsored by Dakota Lithium out here, and he gave me a Dakota Lithium battery to do a review on, and it's on my channel. And I was appreciative. I was like, "Yeah, this is great. I'll take it." And so, but I realized, I started reading kind of what you just said. Like, if these things get wet, bye bye.
Yeah,
That ki- that
sayonara.
that kayak is gonna, if it ain't gonna explode, it's gonna melt.
Yeah.
And you're gonna be out there and you're gonna be like, what happened? And so I bought a bunch of extra sealant, but when it's really up, I just got off the water. I just got off the water about an hour and a half ago off of the Delta. And when you fish the Delta, you really don't need a fish finder. You just don't. It's
Right.
too shallow. It's too shallow. There's too many things to throw at. The whole place looks fishy, and you got to know the tides. Yeah, and so I didn't bring my fish finder out, and I didn't. I was kind of just paddling around with this big hole in the front of my boat, and water doesn't get in the boat because the
Hmm.
way it's designed. But I was looking how much it was just kicking up from the bottom without the pod in there. I'm like, there's got to be an opportunity for that water to splash inside that pod when it's in there. I was literally just thinking about that. It's funny you said about the explosions and stuff like that. We don't carry, most bass boaters got a fire extinguisher on their boat, right? So it's
Right.
kind of, we don't carry that. You're going in the water and your plastic boat is going to melt. And if you're out there in the middle of a 200-foot lake, your PFD's on, that's great. But like, kayakers fish alone. We don't,
Hmm.
it's just the nature of the beast. It's kind of like, the 100 yard rule with bass boats, or 50 yard rule. I forgot what it was, but like when you're fishing a tournament, when you fish a kayak tournament, people are gone. You have 100 guys on the water, you'll never see another guy for the rest of the day.
It's crazy you say that. And then when they had that big uh, KBF National Championship here on Kentucky Lake. In practice, these guys were like all strung together. I don't know if it's because our lake is so big, and they wanted to at least be within hollering distance. That sounds really redneck, but be within distance of someone. But I was out fishing in a bass boat, and I was having to dodge a lot of kayak guys. And I don't mean I'm running on plane through them. Obviously, I give them plenty of respect. But you go into a bay, there'll be 5 or 6 boats scattered across 1 or 2 points, but they're all kind of together. But unless you're fishing offshore, it did seem though that during the tournament, a lot of people they went and do their own thing and they get away from each other.
That year, the weather was really bad, wasn't it? Was
Yeah,
that
it
the
was really.
yeah? So I'm not. I want to say someone passed away during that tournament because they got lost and they something happened. It wasn't because they got they drowned or anything. I think they had a heart attack or something. And
Mm.
so, but yeah, I remember seeing Greg Blanchard, who's a big YouTuber. I remember seeing his videos of that, and there was rollers out there. And Kentucky Lake is big. Let's not kid ourselves here. We have lakes out here that are just as big. How deep does Kentucky get?
The main river channel is 60, 70 foot, where most guys are coming in the mouth of a bay. You're looking at 25 to 35 foot. And then, as you go into the bay, it's going to shallow up. But, these creek channels that run in the major bays are all 25 plus feet deep. You start getting in the back in the shallow areas, you're looking at 4 to 5 feet. I mean, right now where I'd fish, my boat's going to be sitting in about 12 to 15, casting in about 6 to 8 foot of water. And
Yeah.
but they come so early, that the lake really hadn't come up to summer pool. Where if it comes up to summer pool, our water fluctuates. A lot of these kayak guys are going to get way back in the bays. They're going to get in that little fields and stuff like that. A lot of places bass boats aren't going to get, and they could really, really spread out. That part of kayak fishing really intrigues me, of getting to water where nobody else can get to.
That happened to me today. Actually, I was on the Delta and it was low tide, and I saw a couple of guys in an older Ranger behind me, and I had to kick up my pedals and started paddling so that I could actually go through this real skinny water. And one of the guys from the bass boat yelled, "Goes, that's the only reason why I want to kayak." And I got back there and caught a little fish, but that's kind of the interesting part, and that's kind of what I was going back to before. Is that was one of the things that drew me to kayak fishing, is you can get to those quiet spots where you're not on the main part of the lake, where boats can't go, and you can really kind of just get some quiet time. I mean, hell, I fish to relax. I don't fish to, you know, go out there and remember my daily stresses. And
Mm-hmm.
a bass boat going by at 70 miles per hour, candidly doesn't throw a lot of wake. It's not like those big deep V boats
Right.
that go by. That those guys. I mean, I've had those guys. They're on the Delta. There's always one jackass who's got some
Yeah.
sort of yacht, and you're out there, and he's just running, like 6 inboards, and those things just kick up so much water. And
Mm-hmm.
they 20 miles per hour doing that, it kicks up a wake. And those guys don't know what they're doing. Guys who own boats like that, there's a reason why they don't take them out of the water, because they'll never get them back in there. It's bass boat guys and fishermen. I got a lot of respect for guys who own boats, because they know what they're doing on a boat. They're respectful of the people in the water, and but these guys who are the rich guys, and I always tell them, I'm like, why the hell would you want a boat on this crappy part of the California Delta? Go to the Bahamas and park that thing, or go to Florida.
You'd be surprised the amount of people got rigs like that here. I mean, we're a big lake, but there's always a couple guys with small penises running around. Uh, that's what I say anyway.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the kayak tournament scene. So it's really blown up. I mean, we had a FLW kayak series. I don't know the state of that anymore, with the purchase from MLF. Bassmaster now has the Bass Kayak Series,
Yep.
um, and then we've still got KBF, uh, which really kind of started it. Chad Hoover's deal really kind of blew that up, and uh, then you got the Hobie. Is it the Boss? Do they call it the Boss or BOS? I don't.
Yeah. 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 Ho- if I could be totally wrong on this, but Hobies, guys who own Hobies, it's kind of like they're their own little world, right?
Kind of
They
like
still
guys who own Ranger boats.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's kind of like those guys are in a special group and they wear special clothes and they all, special handshake bullshit. And they have a different mentality about things, about just boat quality. And it's not necessarily, it's some of it's true, but some of it's not. But KBF and FLW did that partnership, and I actually did. I spoke about that on my channel when it happened. I kind of thought it was comical. I thought it was disingenuous. It was trying to grow the sport at a non-organic level. And I
Right.
say that because you weren't fishing the same lakes as the FLW tournament was. You were fishing a smaller lake and you had to drive to the check-in that was at the main lake where the FLW tournament was actually going on. It was not really put together well. Chad Hoover grew something from scratch. I give the guy a lot of credit. He's hated in our community by a lot of people just because Chad has rules, and
Right.
sometimes people just they don't like rules. If you're at the top, I hate to quote Nick Saban, but when you're on the top of the mountain, somebody wants to knock you over. And he did that. And there's always been local tournament scenes, and Chad and his group of guys got smart and started saying, look, we're going to start picking up your liability if you'll become a KBF affiliate. So Yakabas, the local club out here, which was started by a bunch of guys that live like in the Bay Area, they over the course of time they were approached by Chad and said, hey, look, instead of running concurrent tournaments at the same time, KBF has a tournament out here and you have a tournament the same day on the same lake because the permit's already taken care of. Why don't you just become a KBF kind of branch and we'll pick up your liability? And when that happened, entry fees went up, and there wasn't a huge increase in the payouts. And it caused a lot of people to hate Chad Hoover, and everybody's blaming Chad Hoover. It wasn't Chad's fault. It was just because now the insurance was taken care of,
Right.
and it was more of true organization, and it's just grown. And they did the national championships and stuff like that are all great. And then with Hobie's deal is worldwide, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
the Hobie Worlds, we had a guy that we fished with in our local tournament that went to Hobie Worlds. And just watching him go and document it, he's not a YouTuber, a young kid, just a stick.
Mm-hmm.
His whole families are sticks. And he went out there and it was a life-changing experience. I think his was in Norway or something like that, or Finland.
Yeah.
And that's really neat that Hobie does that. Like that's what makes Hobie's tournaments special. But you got to fish out of a Hobie,
Right.
so it kind of lets a lot of people out. But they're big deals, and I personally think that they're the most respected circuit
Mm-hmm.
because it's still very very it just comes off very polished.
Now
KB, KBF had a lot of problems, so
let's talk about this Hobie tournament at Lake Fork, which Major League Fishing's there this week, and I promise you, you're going to see some big ones caught. It's going to be, I have a feeling it's going to be a sight fishing deal in parts of the lakes. But I don't know if this is beating a dead horse. It may be, but I like to talk about it because somebody I personally know is involved in it. And the whole deal with Ron Champion and Ben DeGate. And I know Ron, and he's always treated me above and beyond. He's been a great guy to me and someone I consider a friend. Taking that out of it, and I've looked at it at all angles. I don't believe Ron did anything purposely. I could see why some people would be upset. I can also see Ron's point of view. And let's face it, he's a damn good fisherman. He doesn't really need any advantage. And I don't think he would take an advantage purposely. Uh, but that's where I'm at with kayak fishing. There's so many gray areas. And I made a comment. I said it on a show before about this is the kind of stuff that's keeping kayak fishing back, and someone from Major League Fishing that's a cameraman said they agree. It's really hard to sell to sponsors when after every tournament there seems to be some issue, and it takes days, weeks, maybe even months to really sell it. And so now the hog trough has been banned. So you just killed a company right there. Hog trough is pretty
yeah,
much got shit on,
yeah,
and now everybody's got to buy a catch board, I
catch,
guess,
yeah.
catch. And I promise you, in 2 or 3 months there will be an issue with that.
Oh, they're look. I can't speak for everybody's character. In regards to Ron, I don't know him. I do know he's a stick. I do know that he's always carried himself in a professional manner. I do know that there was no logical reason for him to cheat. And I don't and I did a my 2 cents on this, and I don't think that he did. The problem is that the evidence just looks damning, right?
Yeah.
And so it's one of these things where, yeah, as soon as you're accused of something, your image is already tarnished
Right.
and you can't come back from it. And he got on Facebook and defended himself. I'm like, shit, the guy should. I would defend myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can only take so much. I don't care how mature you are. I don't care how old you are. It's playground tactics when it comes to social media,
And he
right? Like
did do it in a very professional
he
way, I
did.
might add.
He did, and I didn't make that video. I didn't make my 2 cents video on that until I saw his video, and I was like, he's got, like, look, the guy's got no reason to do it, and I threw out some, reasons why other people might do it, but the guy's top five 90% of the time, and he doesn't have anything to gain by it. The photos that were coming out, like I'm like I don't know. Like it can look like that. It can't look like that. People will cheat if they want to cheat. I mean,
Mhm.
guys that fish out of bass boat tournaments, that have a final weigh in that don't do it MLF style. I mean, I know guys that are throwing weights down fish's throats. I mean, it's a total disregard of the fish's health. They're like, we're just going to shove a lead weight down this guy's throat because we need that extra couple of ounces. The interesting thing about kayak fishing, though, is that if you are someone with loose moral character and are willing to cheat to win because maybe you have a medical bill, maybe this is supposed to pay your bills, maybe something happened, maybe you just need it, or maybe your sponsor is going to drop you, whatever.
Maybe you
During the
just want to
turn,
be famous on Instagram.
yeah, that's and so, but the thing about what's different about most tournaments, like the fishing tournaments, is that with kayak fishing, you see the leaderboard. You could
Right.
be out on the water day two and be like, okay, I'm down by 13 inches. I need to kind of make this up somehow. And you could bend the board. You can guys cut boards. There was a guy a couple years ago that cut a board at the top because the first 9 inches of the board is just blank slate. So the end where the bump is, this guy I guess was cutting the board down 3 inches, so the tail would be pushed down 3 more inches from the bump. And you can't. You're taking a photo and you're sending it to a guy that's sitting on shore, and guys get disqualified because the mouth is open. Guys get disqualified because they stretch the tail. I mean, there's all these kind of things because we self-regulate.
Mhm.
And that's what I think pisses people off the most. And that's why there's always a problem at the end of every tournament, is because they'll say, I took a picture of my fish like this and I got DQ'd for that fish, or I lost a quarter of an inch. And they'll see somebody else's fish and they'll argue that it's the same placement on the board. The mouth is open just the same. How come theirs is fine? There's too many variables that go on, and candidly, everybody lies at some point in their life. And like if you got some situation going on, or if you want to be famous or you want to win that tournament, you'll do it if you have low moral character. But regarding Ron, I just don't see it. And I think Hobie's decision uh, to ban the hog trough, I think it was a smart move. But you're right. There's just going to be a matter of time before someone figures out a way to manipulate a catch board, to manipulate a photo, to do whatever they need to do to kind of trick the judges.
Mhm.
And um, I think the MLF format, that there's it's getting weight on the boat. There's a licensed official on the boat. You're seeing that, and they're agreeing to it, and the angler agrees to it. That's probably the closest way to being honest. You know,
Yes. I mean, I know bass. There's no co-anglers at that level. It's all marshals. FLW. You have co-anglers for 2 days, I believe, and then it's a marshal style system. Honestly, technology is so good with GoPros and all that. Um, I think on the bass boat level, eventually that co-angler thing is going to phase out. And I may piss some people off, but I feel if you're fishing the top level of a bass tournament, you don't need another guy in the boat. I mean,
yeah,
other than a cameraman. I mean, uh, co-anglers, they were kind of developed to Honestly, it was to pay attention to the boaters, make sure everything's going smoothly, no cheating, stuff like that. It wasn't really to create this alternate universe of pro co-anglers, which I think is hilarious. You're there to kind of learn and observe. And, there's boaters that tell you, I've had some co-anglers that tell me how to fish, what to fish, wrong bait, wrong color. And then I've had some that just sit back there, throw the other way, and all they do is, you need the net, I got you. And that's how it should be, to be
Yeah,
honest. But
yeah.
I was just thinking, for kayak fishing to really, eliminate that doubt, is there any way they can do the Brecknell scale thing and take a photo of the scale or a 5-second video of it bottoming out? I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think the first thing that would have to occur, because the easiest thing to manipulate is the actual board.
Hmm.
So the first thing that would have to occur to really legitimize it is, with a catch board, they have some weight to them. So I think that everybody's boat would need to be inspected before they went on the water. You have
Absolutely.
to have just one catch board. You can't have two, and it has to be, I almost think that there should be a point where you do your initial check-in that you're not allowed to use your own catch board. You have to use the one that's given to you, that's been cleared by an official of the particular tournament. I think the other solution, and a lot of guys already do this, and they don't have YouTube channels, but they're running video.
Hmm.
And I think the video camera just needs to be situated in a certain way. I almost think that the way the structures of the catch board, and this would be really cumbersome, this is just an idea, but there's a way to probably mount a camera that would hang over that catch board on some sort of, I wouldn't say tripod, but monopod that would hang over, that the whole thing would be videoed. If there was any question about it, you could go back to the video. And
Absolutely.
because everything is based on cloud technology, right? Go back,
Hmm.
it's just going to go into the cloud. And then when we're done with the tournament and everybody's all okay, we get rid of that information. It's like having a security camera at a freaking convenience store. And
Yeah.
so I think those are the only two things that you can really do. Uh, you, you know, Either that or you get rid of the whole measurement part and you make guys start having, off the side live wells
Yeah.
where it's a 5 fish limit and you have your own personal scale, and then you do it like a traditional way, in old school, with those fish in the water. I know tons of guys. When I first started kayak fishing, I was just like, because a lot of guys fish for striper out here and stuff like that. And obviously, my personal opinion, when you catch fish that you're going to eat, whatever it is, whatever species it is, you either get in the boat and kill it as soon as possible and get it on ice, or you keep it in the lot, you keep it alive.
Hmm.
And some of these guys will put, stripers on a stringer and reel them around because they're going to eat them. You can't do that with a bass, right? Because we're trying
No.
to preserve the species. And so these guys would take pool noodles and they would put like hamper clothing hampers, like mesh nets, and they would
Hmm.
make little live wells where they would tug behind their boat or on the side of their boat, and they would put like a little lid on it so they'd catch something. They throw the bass back in there, or whatever fish it was, and it would keep the fish alive. And it's got real good fresh water. It's not actually being in a live well. That's the only other option, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just, or you have check boats,
Hmm.
meaning that if there's a certain area you can fish on a lake, let's say Kentucky Lake, and like this whole section of the lake is off limits, you have 10, 15 boats that are anchored and saying, if you're fishing in this area and you catch something, you gotta put it on a fish grip, or you got to stick it in your net and keep it in the water and paddle over and get it officially measured, which will take forever, right? And
Yeah. That's
it's just an issue because
right.
it's like so hard to do. I think handing out the actual boards and not being able to use your own, and I think the camera thing is the only real solution that's logical
Yeah.
and inexpensive.
I don't want it to come. The part of the thing I liked about the kayak fishing format was that you don't really need a set of scales. Unfortunately, that can come to bite you because where I live, you can catch, a 5.5 pound smallmouth that's shorter than, 3.5, 4 pound largemouth.
Yeah.
But we're fishing for length here, not weight, different format. I don't want it to come to that where guys are having to tote bass around and stuff because I'm anti. I'm pro conservation. And look, I've done it. I've stuffed bass in live wells. I took hero photos. I did one with Matt Allen at a private lake. 20 bass in one photo. They're all over 4 pounds. But it's an extreme different circumstance. We had two bass boats, all live wells going. And I'm with Matt, who knows a lot about keeping these fish alive. And he showed
Yeah.
me some tricks. But in a hot summer, and some of these guys catching these fish deep and stuff like that, I'm not sure how it is, but I don't ever want it to come to that. And I like the, catch, measure, release deal. I think it's great for conservation. And you'll listen to some of the bass pros and they say the guys that got it going on is the kayak guys. And really, Major League Fishing is not any different, except they're not measuring them. They'll just weigh them right in and release them. So that's one reason I like Major League Fishing. I think eventually you'll see a lot of the higher tournament organizations go to something very, very similar. And I'll tell you this. I'll be honest. I was at the Bassmaster Classic, the greatest tournament on earth, but with Bass Live and everything, it ruined it for me as far as the weighing. I knew what everybody had. I knew Hank Cherry was going to win, and this guy was making a run here. And then the weigh-in, the first day took forever. And I'm like, all these people know who's got what. Just run them through real quick. We don't have to have a giant production. So in a way, the live coverage of tournaments these days, and even kayak, because Tourney X and whatnot, it's updating instantly. It kind of spoils a lot of the excitement and drama.
Yeah, yeah, it does. I mean, that's kind of the cursing of technology because just the way we're wired now. We got to have everything. We got to know the information now. Like I don't want to wait. I don't want to wait 2 days, or I don't want to wait. But like, I think in the conservation piece, I think MLF got it right. I think they got it really right. I think the format they got it really right. I think that when that came to light, I think that FLW and BASS they were a little nerve wracked when that came around.
Mm.
Um, I don't know how well FLW is doing these days. I don't, I still watch MLF, on every weekend. It's got it on my DVR, and I save them for rainy days, and I get home and I watch them if I fish that day. I think it's more exciting the way that they do the coverage of everything. Um, and in regards to the kayak community and how we are really good with conservation, uh, you'd be surprised. Some of those fish are out of the water for quite some time on the measuring because you're trying to manage. Let's just say, a guy out here that I'm friends with just caught an 11.4.
Yeah. Boy.
Yeah, and he's a good fisherman, but he's got a YouTube page too. But like he's a good guy. He lives right down the street from me, and I give him a lot of crap because he's a 49ers fan. And
Well,
he,
I can't hate because did have a couple balls on that Super Bowl team, even though it lost.
so he texted me out of the blue. He goes, he said "F you and your stupid dogs" because he knows I'm a Georgia fan, and he gives me crap about that. And so he had 11.4, and then I watched his video, and he was very conscious of how long he kept that big girl out of the water, but trying to get the angle of the fish, trying to get it to lay still on the board, trying to make sure that the picture is lined up right so it's qualified for the tournament. Those take multiple pictures. You're juggling many things. You've only got two hands. That was and to even go back to the Ron Champion thing, there was a photo where Ron's hand was over almost a 23-inch fish, and it looked like Ron's hands. I know Ron's a big guy. He's like what 6'5".
At least.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not just a 6'5" guy. I mean, he's built like heavyweight
Yeah.
MMA fighter.
Yeah. So he had these mitts. Like his hands are just like these mitts. And I was like, yeah, a guy that size probably can handle an 8-pound fish like that. And he was doing it. He said the reason why someone made a comment like the way he was holding the fish, and he rebuttal. He's like, I'm trying to hold the fish down on the board. And that kind of goes to my point is that like these fish, when we're talking about conservation, they spend a lot of time out of water. I mean, they do get back in as quickly as possible. I have an oversized net, so if I catch a big fish, which has been a long time since I caught a big fish, but
Same here.
the last fish that I caught was a 7-pounder, and I caught her, I got her unhooked, but I put her right back in the net. And when she was in the net, she was all the way fully under the water. And I got situated. I locked the net under my knee, and I made sure I was like, if I'm going to get a photo with this thing and I'm going to do the whole Instagram crap, I'm going to let her sit in the water. Some guys don't have the ability to do that because they don't have the right net or they don't have a net
Mm-hmm.
with them sometimes. But I think the conservation piece is really important. I'll give you another example. I was fishing a local tournament in 2018 on the California Delta. I was with a guy, a doctor. He was a doctor. And the beginning of the morning, probably third cast at 6 a.m., I caught a 6-7. We put her in the live well.
Right.
We fished for the rest of the day. We've got 2 hours left of the tournament. He pulls out a 10-1.
Jeez.
And so I was like, oh my God, our bag, we're going to win. And we won that tournament. We won the tournament on the Delta. And, it was a local club. So it was only like 50 anglers. But when we got to weigh in, before we took her out of the live well, we in the weigh in, we had to take the boat out of the water
Mm-hmm.
and drive it around and get to the weigh-in station. We told these guys we have to be quick, and I'll never forget this. My boater and myself were hysterical, not like crying or anything like that, but the big girl, the 10-1, wasn't reviving when we
Oh,
put her back
jeez.
in the water. And look, if you love this sport and you want to see it conserved, you get upset at stuff like that, right?
Absolutely.
You're like, his name was Cedric. I was like, get her to swim. And she was breathing, but we were just running her back and forth in the water. And his arm was getting tired from doing it for so long. I was like, let me take over. And we did it for such a long time. But it was the middle of the summer, kind of what you were talking about before,
Mm-hmm.
sitting in a live well. We had 5 alive, but in one was the 10-1, but in the other one were 3 threes and a 6. And so there ain't a lot of room in there to breathe. And he had a brand new Ranger. And so, as big as those live wells are, when you get a big fish, it ain't big enough.
Right.
And there was a guy out here named Danny Cross who in 2016 won a Ranger boat. He had a 40-pound bag on the Delta.
Holy sheesh.
And
Nice.
he won his boat. And I'll never forget like his picture. I'm like, let me get something straight. You have every fish you're holding in your hand right now is over 6 pounds. Some of them were in the 9s and one was in the 10s. I'm like, oh my God. But just thinking about the situation those fish were in. And then you even go to, when you kayak fish and you're fishing deep water and you pull one up from 60, 70 feet. Sometimes if you do it too quickly, they'll bug eye, right?
Mm-hmm. Just like a
But
grouper or something offshore.
yeah, and so, but when you're in a kayak, if you can get them back in the water, they'll swim right back down. When you got them in a bass boat, you got to fizz them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's another thing too. I fizz when I fizz a fish, I fizz them through the throat, right? I don't do it through the gill.
And,
I don't do it
and
through the gill.
and really, the guys that are really good at fizzing them, that's what you're supposed to do.
Well, to be honest with you, with the reason why I do it in the throat is because everything that I was taught, there was a place for me to aim the needle.
Mm-hmm.
And on the side, I'm like, wait, where does this go again? And you did it, so I just thought the throat was just always easier. And then when you do that to a fish and you keep them in a live well and they start going belly up because you didn't do it enough, you gotta drag them out, do it again. And look, fish, I'm sure feel things when they get caught. I'm not really concerned about that because I want them to go swim back and be alive and finish out their life. Um, and that was one of the things too, is that it used to always bother me is that there's always a group of people that catch bass out here to eat them.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it be for that's the way they were raised, or that's just how they are. But and there's a couple of pages on Facebook. Some of these guys are catching 8 pounders, and they're keeping
Right.
them. And I'm like, man, that fish is probably 15 years old and has
Mm-hmm.
survived every natural predator. Let the thing go. That's how I look at big game too. I haven't hunted in a long time,
Mm-hmm.
but guys that go after big game, I've always just been kind of like, you just killed a 40-year-old elephant or whatever. That doesn't make any sense, man. That elephant deserves to live, and that fish deserves to go off and swim
We're
away.
fixing to go off on a tangent here because here's how I look at it, Matt. Very similar but kind of different. Uh, I've always been, if you're purchasing a license and you stay within the creel limits, which they set because they know people are going to harvest fish,
Yeah.
I see no problem with. If you want to go out on Kentucky Lake, as tough as it's been, and I want every fish released, and you want to catch 5 bass, other than smallmouth, because you do go to hell for eating smallmouth. It's in the Bible, from what I was told. Um, you're more than welcome to do that. However, I can still criticize you for keeping 6, 7, 8 pounders, because at the end of the day, the best fillets is 15, 16 inches long. Uh, that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
Uh, and I'm a guy that I spent a couple years in the filming industry, outdoors, and I've been to Kansas, I've been to Iowa, I've been to Texas, I've been to Montana. I've been on big game hunts, and I kind of agree with you. If you're a true hunter, like I'll use Joe Thomas as an example. Joe is a very great guy. He's down to earth, soft to the earth guy, but he wants to get the North American Grand Slam, the Grand Slam,
Yeah.
all this. But you know what? Even if he kills a trophy, he don't have to kill the biggest animal out there. He's hunting his list, and they pack it out, they quarter it, and guess what? Joe's going to eat it. So, but you don't see him going to Africa just to kill elephants and all this crazy stuff. He's a trophy hunter, but he's not. Man, if that deer ain't 150 inches, I ain't gonna pull back the bow,
Well,
and that's and I respect that.
yeah, it's interesting. I don't want to get off too much on a tangent, but like I haven't hunted in a long time, and I'm a bow hunter, and I've been really itching to get back into it. Uh, and the reason why is because I remember when I hunted, nothing went to waste,
Correct.
and so in like in regarding fish and stuff like that, I think that there's certain cultures that they know how to use every piece of the fish, right?
Yes.
And look, I don't have a problem either if somebody wants to take a couple of 3 pounders out of a lake and kind of do that. It's just the big girls. Uh, just my philosophy is just like, hey, let them live. There's other fish that you can catch, you can take home and eat. And
Right.
I do believe that if you do eat a smallmouth, you do go to hell. I do.
Yeah. I my preacher confirmed that one time. But uh, and fishing similar to, I've always said it's so similar to deer hunting. You just don't look at it. People always say, you film these guys and they go to the best place, and why they kill big deer. I said because they let big deer go. And he said, well, what do you mean? I said, best way to get big deer is genetics. And if you go and shoot the young ones that can't grow, you'll never have big deer. Now, there is, just like in fishing, if you put the big ones back, they're going to spread those genetics. You may have a little faster growth rate, but if you eat all the small ones, they can't get big. Now, it's different when you manage a lake like my buddy has Lake X, and I'm actually going to have him on here next week, and he's really going to talk about that. So I'm probably not super qualified for that, but there is a management deal, and I'd heard from Kentucky Fish and Wildlife, they thought the reason we're not having these great results is there was too many 13 to 14-inch bass, which I totally disagree with. But it's just I personally, I'm not going to keep big fish. Replica mounts the way to go. If you want to eat them, that's fine. Please eat the biggest group of undersized fish. If your lake's got a 14-inch limit, please eat the 14, 15 inchers.
Yeah.
Let them 4 or 5 pounders grow, because, like you said, those are old fish, man. Uh, they don't get big by being dumb.
No, and that's the thing is that like, hey, this fish, you tricked this big fish. Congratulations.
Yeah.
You were the person that did it. But I also another part of that is too is like you let him go back so somebody else can catch him. Right? It's
Mm-hmm.
because you want to foster the sport and the love of it. Because you probably attest to this too. There is nothing that will put a bigger smile on your face than pulling out a big fish after a slow day, or if you're in a tournament to kind of put you over the top. There's something magical about seeing a big fish and fighting a big fish. And the ones that I've had in my life, my personal best is only 8.9, and I caught that from the bank. And it was literally the first year I started bass fishing, and I caught it on a whopper plopper. And I remember fighting it from the bank, and I remember getting it on shore. I'd never seen a bass that big. And I took pictures and I was like, oh my God, and I got it back in the water as quickly as possible. And then I learned about, how old that fish probably was, and how many eggs she'll probably kick out and
Mm-hmm.
why it's probably a female. And, and then that just creates this stoke, and uh, it brings a lot of joy. And that's another thing about the sport as a whole. I don't think it's really blown up. I don't think bass fishing as a whole is just blown up. I think there's just more exposure to it now.
Right. I will a lot. I get tired of hearing growing the sport all the time. But everybody's growing the sport. I think what people are doing is they're exposing the sport. They're
Yeah.
saying, I love Bass University and Iconell, and he has done a lot to try to, as they say, grow the sport. But what he's really done is expose the sport, put it into more people's eyes. They go, oh, this is a lot better than Jimmy Dill here with the big, large chaw skull end spitting on his depth finder all day, or you know, that's the conception that bass fishing are all a bunch of rednecks. And what he's trying to show is it's great for the inner city person. It's great for the guy that wears a suit and tie to work, and it's great for the blue collar guy. And I personally like Iaconelli. Some people don't, but he's good. And something I talked about Matt Robertson. He was just on the last Baitman Raw. Is I feel like some people really don't want to see a lot of personality. They just want to see a cookie cutter guy walk across the stage or fish a kayak tournament with no personality. They don't want someone that's cocky and boisterous. And you look at all the other professional sports. I mean, baseball's got guys. NFL obviously has personalities. NBA, they're all out there, and people flock to that, whether it's good or bad.
I think in regards to Iconelli, I think Iconelli is the loudest guy in the sport, but he does so much good for the sport and as far as exposing people. And going back to like this comment of growing the sport, I hate that too. You can't grow anything. People have to have a natural interest in doing it. It's not like you're going to force someone to do it. It's exposing more people to the sport. And kind of like what you just said, a lot of people think that fishing in general is just, and I blame Bill Dance,
Yeah,
but it's just kind of this redneck, you're sitting on the back of a boat, you're sitting down and you got a dumbass Tennessee hat on.
I was going to say that's the reason you don't like Bill Dance. Don't kid me for a second. If he was
I'm
wearing a
not,
Georgia hat, you would be bowing at the knees.
yeah, so no, but Bill's a real simple guy. And when you look at his person and let's be honest here, when a lot of us, I didn't even bass fish and I grew up on Bill Dance, right? Because I used to watch fishing shows as a kid. Bill's demeanor is the polar opposite of Mike, right? Mike and
Yeah,
Ellie.
he's
And
just ho hum. It is what it is.
yeah. And so I think a lot of guys are like, this is how you're supposed to behave, right? It's kind of like guys who watch golf. They watch, I hate golf. So they watch like, old time golfers and they're dressed up and they're behaving a certain way and they're calm in their demeanor. And then you got these younger guys that are wearing baseball hats backwards and they're wearing bright clothes and they're acting kind of a little bit of a fool and they're showing excitement on the course. That's how these things are. And you know, exposing more people to the sport, like, the guys that are the white collar guys that have never thought of being fishing because they're supposed to be on a golf course. They're not supposed to be out. I have a white collar job
Yeah.
and I hate it because I don't relate to that kind of their kind of mentality. But that being said, when I talk to people on the phone, they're like, "What are you doing this week?" I'm like, "I'm going fishing." Like, "Oh, did you charter something?" "No, I'm going on my kayak," and
Right.
it's kind of like, "Oh, that's great." And then every once in a while you run into a guy be like, "Oh yeah, I fish too." And it brings people together, but I think the exposure is the right way to look at it. And I'll never forget when MLF was on CBS
Mm-hmm.
on Saturdays. That was such a big deal. They cut the format down for TV to make it an hour instead of two. And I remember how pumped I was because I wanted more people to see it. My family didn't understand why I was so into it. I still am very much into it. In regards to my channel, like I just got off the water. I started my channel when I was doing my channel.
Yeah, let's talk about your channel and kind of your focus on there.
Yeah, so well, my first video ever, I'm a big time skier. And so the first video I ever took was on a GoPro mounted to my helmet, and I took it down this real steep terrain called the Wall at Kirkwood. And I've always been a mountain biker, and I've always been a kayaker. I've never been a kayak fisherman, but I've kayaked since I was like 12 and sit inside kayaks. But my channel was started because I just have always had this creative outlet. I used to have a music blog. I was a really big, writer when I was a kid and all through college and after college. And my channel ended up starting out doing gear reviews and outdoor reviews and doing hiking videos and all this stuff. And then all of a sudden it just kind of transformed into this fishing channel. And the reason why I did was because at the time I still ran my own company, and I wasn't a father yet, or I just turned to being a father, and and so I had all this time on my hands to be able to go out, not on the weekends, to fish whenever I wanted to. So I had a ton of content. Fishing was great. I was learning as I was going, and I was showing kind of the process of me trying to figure things out. And I'm not the guy who catches big fish, and I'm not the guy who catches fish all the time. I did probably about a year ago stop posting videos of me skunking, because if you want to hear me talk, you can turn on one of my other videos and listen to me talk all day. And I don't think there's really anything exciting about that unless something monumental happened during that trip, where you lose a big one at the boat. That's different. But like if you're out there throwing a bait around or throwing 20 baits around for 3 hours and you're trying to make a 10-minute video, you can do that. I just don't think it's compelling for me to watch, like me personally. And so I make
Right.
videos that I want to watch. And I I recently got back into hiking heavily because I had a little bit of a hip problem for 2 years, and candidly I couldn't walk. So there was a lot of me fishing in a boat, and so I kind of got back into hiking and doing gear reviews. I've got some really great partnerships in the outdoor world that have always been there that I'm just going to start bringing to light again. I've had some fishing kind of partnerships that have always been kind of crappy, is the right way to put them. The ones that just basically, spray and pray and say you want to be part of our pro staff
Oh
or
yeah, dude, that's the
staff,
word.
and yeah, and so I didn't like that. I was just like, this is ridiculous. There was a time everybody was on the Cass King team and everybody was on the Wu Tungsten team and all this stuff.
They're still recruiting guys every day.
It's
Some
ridiculous.
of that's like a cult. I always said 5x3 fishing was a cult. I actually think they sold in a new ownership. Wish them the best, but man, I'll tell you the one right now, and I always get hell for it, is six gill fishing.
Mhm.
Dude, I'm telling you, you can post. Someone will post, "Hey, I'm looking at a Dobbins 805 CB. What's your thoughts?" And it won't take 5 minutes for someone. Have you ever tried six gill rods? They got a BOGO, buy one get one. They're the best. Blah blah blah. And I'm thinking, if you have to market your rods as buy one get one free, it is not comparable to a Dobbins or a Loomis or even a Daiwa of the world.
I think like I was thinking about this when I was on the water today. There are so many bait makers and rod makers these days that are cutting corners. I'm talking about the big guys. I'm not talking about the guy down the street who makes a custom rod for you.
Right.
We got a guy out here who makes really good ones by the name of Bam. But Six Gill, Cast King, they just prey on these people that have social media presences. It doesn't matter how big or how small you are. Say, look, we'll give you 50% or 30% off of your purchase if you tag us and do this, and then you're right. You see it all over the place, and it comes in waves. Like Six Gill definitely is all over the place right now. But there was a time when Cast King, I was like, oh, these they look crappy. You're selling them only on Amazon. Like, don't try to push it as quality gear. And I think, you mentioned something like someone will post something on Facebook and say, hey, I've got this great, Phoenix feather that I want to pair up with a good reel. What's your real choice? And you've always got people just plugging their brands that they're
Oh, it's
affiliated with.
awful.
And it's like, really, it's like it happens in the kayak community too. There was a post that happened just the other day. Somebody said, I need to buy a kayak as soon as possible. And I asked the question, "What's your budget? What do you really? What kind of water do you want to take it on?"
Which really is the proper way to answer that question.
I mean, well, so here's the thing. Facebook is for morons. I partake in it. And but what always bothered me about people asking questions on Facebook is they come in with a open-ended blind question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big research guy. When I buy stuff, I research the ever living crap out of it before I start asking questions. And that's just the way I am. I do that with my work. I do that with gear. I do that with fishing rods. And when people come and say, "I need to buy a kayak," or what kayak should I buy, or what rod should I buy? And it's just like, dude, go test them out. Like, don't listen to us. Like, you have no
Mm-hmm.
idea. You have to get your hands on it if you can. If you can't, don't ask us. Ask somebody who's holding that rod and say, "Can I throw your rod around for a little while?" I've never met a fisherman that won't let me try one of their rods out if we're on the bank, on a boat, or whatever. Uh,
Absolutely.
and so, yeah, I think the sponsorship stuff and people just not even paying attention. But people are always just like, "You should buy." Guy tells people he's got a $500 budget. People are giving him $1,500 kayaks. I'm like, are you even? You're hurting. You're just adding fodder to the system. That's why I hate Facebook.
Yeah. I've never really, uh, well, I've always put it out there that I'm affiliated with 6 Cents and I love most of their baits. And I'll be honest with you, if there's stuff that I don't care about from them, I don't promote it. Obviously, what you see me post on Instagram and promote on YouTube, that's stuff that I fish with, I have confidence in, but I'm never going to put my status as I don't even say a YouTuber content creator in jeopardy by recommending stuff that is junk. Um, you know, I, I put a lot of trust in my reputation on that. If I tell you, Matt, hey, this 6 Cents Quake is a great lipless crankbait. I mean that because number one, I fished it. I've caught fish on it. I'm confident in it. Um, but if I tell you, hey, this 6 Cents bait is the best, soft plastic ever, I'm really kind of losing credibility because at the end of the day, nothing's really the best ever. I hate it when people say, well, what's the best casting rod out there? What's the best, square bill crankbait? What's the best for me may not be the best for you.
Yeah.
But I can give my recommendations. And that's one thing I will say, you know, Casey's been very good to me and said, do not change. I want you to promote us, but don't falsely promote us. And I wish a lot more companies would be like that. But I've seen some of these stipulations some of these people want for 10% off. It's ridiculous.
Oh yeah, it's post once a day or once a week, and you have to tag us, and you have to put these hashtags. Cass King did that to a buddy of mine, and he was like, "I'm out," and he has a really good partnership with a major brand now, which out of respect for him, I won't say who it is, but
That's fine.
and they basically are very, very like, "Look, here's the deal. You're going to promote our products, but you're going to do it your way, and we want you to be honest." I'm curious though, real quickly, your partnership with or whatever it may be with 6 Cents. Do you throw their rods too?
I get that question a lot actually. It's kind of funny because I sold all my reels the other day. Uh, Long story short, I had to pay some bills. Life happens. We all know how it is. I'm waiting on
Yep.
Uncle Sam, and I kind of wanted to upgrade, and I wanted to do it to where I don't have anything, so I can go look and buy what I want. I've always been a dial guy, but I have a sensory rod and I have a Lux rod, and I did a review on the Lux rod about a year and a half ago. It was on my website that I need to renew, by the way. Uh, for the money, for $119, I feel it's a good rod. Um, I've used it for multiple things. I've thrown a shaky head on it. I've thrown a swim bait on it. Not a big giant one, just like a bass tricks. It's got a good kind of a parabolic bend. It's more of a fast action, not extra fast. So I like how it loads. It's a really good bladed jig rod. Um, I like that. The Lux rod. I really like the grips on them. I like what they've done with the EVA on it. It's very comfortable for me. And then I've got a 7.2 medium heavy sensory rod. And I used it last spring. First time I ever on finesse jig on it, the Dirty Jigs, Lip Clawson finesse jig, which is one of my favorites out there. And it was sensitive and it was light. And one thing I liked is the way it loaded up. I could skip that jig really, really well. and I'm not a good jig skipper. And I was thinking, man, I think a lot of it has to do with this rod. It's very lightweight. I've not had any breakage issues in them. Uh, they're good rods. Now, saying that, not everybody wants to pay $240 for a rod. They don't really. A lot of retailers don't carry their rods.
Mhm.
I mean, Dobbins, I think Dobbins makes an awesome rod. I throw a lot of Daiwa stuff that's to elites. I've thrown about every model, and I like those rods as well. But I'm kind of guy who buys rods based on my needs, not based on who makes it.
Yeah.
So if I need a jerkbait rod that's 6'8" or whatnot, and I know the specs, if 6 cents don't make it, I'm going to look at Dobbins. If they don't make it, I'm going to go to Daiwa, and I may go to Loomis. I think Loomis makes some of the best crankbait rods ever. Their old stuff, and then Dobbins makes some good stuff. But yeah, I've used a 6 cents rod, and I think I've put them through the test. If they wanted to send me a full set of them, I had no issue with them.
Yeah, so, where I was going with that is that so I only throw 13 stuff, and I have no affiliation with them whatsoever. They did give me, their baits when they launched, and this is where I'm going with this. I like 6 Sense baits, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but 6 Sense started basically almost as a paint company. Not
Correct.
okay, yeah. So they started as a paint company, and that was the thing that always drew me to their baits, right? Like it's like, okay, this paint job is insane.
Hmm.
I was throwing a Quake today on the Delta, one that came out of your box,
Awesome.
and it's lost. She's
Hey, guess
gone.
what? The same one I got is lost too.
She's gone. Uh, they do have good action. They have different action than like a rattle trap, right?
Hmm.
And which makes them unique. And they do catch fish. I've caught fish on them. They do. So like that to me is a solid bait. But really, for me, Sixth Sense has always been this. Those colorways on the baits have always just been spot on,
Hmm.
beautiful. I mean, that's the only word I can really use for them. So going back to the reason why I asked about you throwing their rods, I always kind of felt funny when a bait company started getting into the ancillary parts of like trying to become this one-stop shop for fishermen.
Right.
And 13 did it last year when they started making soft plastics, when they started making these little jig heads. And I'm like, why? You don't need to do that.
That
Uh,
actually really worried me. But I'll let you finish what you're saying. I think
well,
we're
yes,
going to the same point.
yeah, so it's like, why are you doing that? You have a good thing. I think you're going to alienate people because you're running more risk of creating a bad product. And then I always go back to the old school companies. Like Luz doesn't make baits, like Fenwick doesn't make baits, and Strike King doesn't make rods and reels. And Strike King still makes the best soft plastics on the market, in my opinion. And again, soft plastics, kind of what you were saying earlier, 95% of the soft plastics out there are the same mold.
Right.
Everybody's crawl looks the same. But when you're making a rod, the blanks and how the blank is positioned on the grip and the kind of grip and where the real seat is, that those are touchy things, and you can really mess that stuff up. And I think Gary Dobbins just does a really good job with their rods. Uh, my fishing club had a partnership with Gary because he was a NorCal guy. I don't know if he's moved to Texas yet or not,
He
but
did move.
yeah. And so we had a really good deal. Being part of the club, we would get 40% off of his rods. I hope I don't get in trouble for saying that. I shouldn't, because
No,
it
I
was,
think most people know what Gary does for the fishing community. He takes care of those club guys and stuff
yeah.
pretty well.
Yeah. So I had a full lineup of Furies, and I started throwing 13s, and when they came out the baits, I was just like, this is. I literally said, this is stupid. Did the baits look different? Yeah, but does a soft plastic need to look that different? I don't think so. Because it's supposed to mimic a certain thing, right? There's
Hmm.
not that there's not that many creatures living in underwater in
Yeah.
fresh water.
I
So
my deal with that is you got companies that are they do what they're good at. You said it perfect. Strike King, soft plastic, hard baits. They dominate that. So Zoom, other than Ed Chambers' handmade stuff, which is ridiculously awesome, which you can't just buy it off the shelf anymore. Zoom soft plastic. Everyone knows that. You got missile baits. They're getting big.
Yeah.
They're soft plastics. They're not trying to do spinner baits or hard baits or whatnot. 6th Sense. Casey's goal, and I've known him for a long time, was always to gradually introduce new stuff to the market, and that their soft plastics are good. I haven't got to put them to the test like I have a Sweet Beaver or a D-Bomb or anything, but I can tell by looking at the bait. Obviously, their beaver bait's going to work. It's pretty close, but what I was really crazy about 13 fishing, and I know stuff through the retail side that not the average Joe knows. Um, I just thought that was a crazy move. I'm like, why would you try to? You're not that old. You're only, 6, 7 years old. Why are
7,
you
yeah.
why are you trying to like be a pure fishing right now? Now those guys came from pure fishing, and why are you trying to reinvent the wheel? Why don't you ease in? Because they dropped soft plastics, they dropped hard baits, top waters,
Mhm.
frogs, and then they got bought out by Rapala or Normark. So now I'm like, okay, you just introduced all these hard baits. Now you're owned by this company that's really known for, guess what? Hard baits. How are you going to split this up when 13's hard baits are more expensive than the average Rapala?
It's like Lexus and Toyota, right?
Mm.
So it's just one of those things where I don't know. I'll talk a little bit about 13 right now. I've had concept A's, which are, and it's all I throw. And I've got a concept. I got one of their new Sport Z's, but I've had those reels. This is my 5th year now with them, and 3 of them have crapped out on me. And the zero reverse bearing has just kind of given up on them.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, like I said, I'm not affiliated with these guys. Their customer service sucks. They're responsive, but they're not they're not the responses you want to get. Uh, and so I just kind of winced when they sent. Look, I was excited when they sent me the soft plastics because it was going to make good content for my YouTube channel
Yeah,
because
dude,
nobody.
you got on before almost anybody I knew did. I watched those videos.
Yeah, so I was like, and then I got to test them out, and I caught a couple fish with them. But I gotta be honest with you, when I went out fishing today and I looked in my soft plastic box, there were no 13 soft plastics in
Uh,
there. It was, the tried and true stuff. I agree. I think companies that are getting into fishing should take a little bit of note from the older companies like the Strike Kings and the Lures of the world and say, look, do one thing, do it well. Act like McDonald's. Make a good hamburger. Don't try to make steak. That's basically what it boils down to.
and I know it's hard for these companies because, you know, let's take one of my favorite spinnerbait companies right here, Accent Fishing. They pretty much make spinnerbaits and buzz baits. It's going to be hard for them to do $1 to $2 million a year in sales in just those two brands, but they don't have to worry about their brand quality falling off because they do it so well. When you're having other companies trying to imitate your bait, you're doing something right. But you're not going to see them like come out with um, soft plastic lines or stuff. They make some jigs, but they don't. They're not trying to be dirty jigs or anything.
Yeah.
It's just everybody wants to grow, everybody wants to make money. I understand that. But some companies, you're better off sticking to what you know best. Um, and I'll be honest with you, you made a really good point. I believe it was you on your 13 fishing video. And this is coming from retail. The names of some of their baits, like frog cakes and all this stuff. Who's going to walk in and go, man, you got that frog cakes crankbait, or you got, whatever name of their soft plastic? It's kind of confusing. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you this: there's a lot of manufacturers that do that because of Reaction Innovations. They had infection and penetration and donkey punch and all this stuff, and so they made it cool to have a funny name on a bait, but because they were the first to do it, uh, they had the tramp stamp color, which is green pumpkin with the black and blue laminate.
Yep.
Anytime I see that, like 6th Sense has got this color Nirvana, that's tramp stamp to me.
Yeah.
Um, uh, I think that was kind of an issue I had with some of the 13 stuff. The names were they're actually hard to remember.
You need where I fish. You need really three colors in soft plastics. You need a June bug, you need a green pumpkin, and you need a watermelon. And there's not much other kind of forage that exists out here for soft plastics where you can't get away with any of that stuff. And for hard baits, and I've simplified a lot of my stuff. I used to be one of these guys. I used to be like you. I used to have
Dude,
too much
yeah.
stuff. Yeah, so I think you need a crawl, you need a shad color, and you need maybe a clear shad color or something with a chartreuse in it for hard baits. And that's how I work.
Hmm.
It's easier when it's simpler. I remember I sold a bunch of. I used to have a jerk bait problem. I mean, I used to have a real problem with rip baits, and
Everyone's got a jerking problem, don't let them
yeah. So my right arm was bigger than my left. So I think I just remember just going through a ton of them, and I remember getting the real high end ones. And this is when I was, ripping a rip bait on a kayak. If you're not standing up, you don't get the same action. It's not
No.
as fun to do. So this is when I was still fishing out of the back of a boat. I remember I got, the mega bass and, all these really just expensive, rip baits. And I remember the one that I always went back to was the KVD Strike King.
That's a good one, man. It
Cause it
really is.
because that thing writes itself after you rip it as hard as you want to, and it's stout, it's built well. And I'll never forget when I sold all my rip baits. The only ones I didn't sell were the KVD ones. It was the only ones I didn't sell. And I just think I don't know where I was going with this, but
Oh, I know. I think as fishermen too is, and hell, I'll blame you too. I'm part of the problem is uh, we always want that one different thing to get the edge. And if you look at the bass results and Major League Fishing, all that, they ain't using a whole lot of just crazy out there stuff. It's usually green pumpkins, watermelons, black and blues, chartreuse, powder blue under crankbait or some sort of shad pattern.
yeah,
Yeah, we've seen everybody wants a hot craw jackhammer. That's no different than throwing a red DT6. I mean,
yeah,
it's simple spring stuff. Um, and of course, I get sucked in, man. Sixth Sense has amazing color schemes, but in the reality, I order every new color that comes out there, and I'll throw them. In reality, I throw some variation of red or yellow in the spring. I throw some variation of a shad pattern in the summer, and in the fall, I'll go with chrome. And I think a lot of guys, if you'll get really simple, you'll see a lot more success and have a little bit more fun fishing because you're not out there like me panicking. Oh, did I get this? Did I get this? Am I got that? You just get a green pumpkin Cinco and you'll do some work with a wacky rig.
yeah. I even do that. I even think not with just the colors, but the brands as well. I throw two brands of crankbaits. That's it. Three, because I do throw a lot of the Sixth Sense stuff now. But for the longest time, I only threw the Spro Mike McClellan rock crawlers
Those are
in
great crankbaits.
in the medium, which goes down to I think about 8 to 12 feet, and the other one that's for shallow. And then I threw the river to sea Big Papas
Mm-hmm.
and just in three colors. And it's kind of what you're saying with the colorways. The rock crawler comes in so many like really cool colors because they have a green pumpkin crankbait in the rock crawler that's translucent on the bottom, and it just works
Yes.
really well in clear water. And the one I was throwing tonight on the Delta just had like this hint of purple in it. And you're like, oh, this just looks so good. And so yeah, you get suckered into it, but I'll agree with you. When you watch MLF on TV or you watch any tournament on TV with the well-known guys, they're not throwing crazy stuff. I remember when the stutter step came out
Mm-hmm.
and MDJ was really promoting it a lot. And because he's a rattle trap guy. And, you know, all the tournaments I've seen him fish, I've never seen him throw it. So
Right.
I've seen YouTube videos of him showing him throwing it and catching fish on the Delta, but I've never seen him throw it in a tournament. You want what works, and what I think confidence is a big thing in fishing. Um, and candidly, I am the guy that gets frustrated really easily on the water. Anybody who fishes with me will tell you that. Like, I get to a point where I'm like, it's time to go, and
Yes. And I think we all have at some point.
Yeah.
Let's go back to this YouTube deal. And dude, we've been on for a while. This is an excellent episode, in my opinion. Um, let's talk a little bit about the evolution of YouTube. And I say this with as nice as way possible. He's a great friend of mine. Is the Gene Jensen effect. And Fluke Master started off doing what I kind of like to do is educating people.
Hmm.
How to cast a bait caster, how to, you know, fish a jerk bait, how to throw the Ned rig. And Fluke's really big in the kayak scene. He's very well respected, but I really feel like the YouTube evolution has gotten insane right now. There's a lot of good content if you're willing to look for it, but the problem in the way the YouTube algorithm works, it hides a lot of people. I love tactical bassing. You know, Matt and Tim are great people. Fluke's a good guy,
Yeah.
but it really punishes you if you don't clickbait and make certain types of videos.
Oh man, like yeah. Look, look. What Gene did initially. So if you look at, let's just look at subscriber counts, right? Like, and I'm not measuring
Sure.
that's the success of a channel, but like, Gene was part of the OG crew of the John B's and all those guys, right? And
Yes.
so just older, right? But
Hmm.
Gene's niche was teaching people how to fish. That used to be part of his tagline, I think.
Right.
And I love those videos because specifically when I got into bass fishing, I'm like, dude, this guy's awesome. He's wearing a Georgia hat. How can I not love this guy?
Absolutely.
And so,
And I let him stay at my house, so I really respect him for a Georgia fan.
so I think that Gene caught like a 10-1 like the second time he was ever on a kayak.
Hmm.
I remember the video.
Yeah. I
And
watched it.
I was already in a kayak and I was just like, oh, Gene's gonna get into a kayak now. And he fell in with Chad Hoover, and it made total sense. And he got really into the kayak scene. I almost think that Gene might have lost some of his initial mojo with his crowd. So this goes to the YouTube algorithm, right?
Hmm.
um, you got the younger kids are more apt to say found a dead body while fishing, right? And they found
Yeah.
a squirrel carcass, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or that guy who does all the underwater videos of finding junk in rivers.
Yeah. The Almighty.
Yeah,
And he's so rich. He's so rich right
he
now.
blew up. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
huge. He's like, and he does everything. He's almost like a treasure hunter. That's how I clarify his channel. But there was a time where he was in the fishing community
Yes.
specifically. And I remember because I remember there was an episode where he went to Clear Lake. I remember those guys were all in Clear Lake at one time.
Hmm.
And it didn't pan out for him because I think his initial crowd was just like, see you later. We don't want to watch this anymore. Now,
Hmm.
I will use me as a personal example. I've got like 2,700 subscribers, right? I've got 300 videos. The videos that always do well on my channel are review videos
Right.
where the product is in the title and it's an honest review and I get tons of reviews on this is the sad fact about my channel. This is how much people hate me. My highest viewed video is the video where I almost get shot. And so uh so but going to what I'm so I decided earlier this year that I'm going to start incorporating some hiking videos and outdoor videos and gear videos that didn't involve fishing. I lost 50 subscribers within a month's time.
Yeah.
And it was because people weren't interested. Let's take this to Matt Allen and Tim, right? I know Matt and Tim very, very loosely. I've run into them more than a handful of times at Clear Lake, and I've run into them at trade shows out here. And Matt and I and Tim had a conversation at a sporting expo about 2 years ago, and we were talking about YouTube and the algorithm. And this is when YouTube was demonetizing everybody. And we
Yes.
were having an honest conversation. And I told Matt, I said, you know why you're getting demonetized because you have the word tactical in your title of your channel.
Hmm.
And so they automatically think guns. And I said, why don't you just unlist it, let YouTube figure it out, and then post it later so the algorithm picks up it and knows that it's not about guns.
Mm-hmm.
And it worked. He actually sent me a thank you note, and I was like, oh, I actually helped out Matt Allen. But the algorithm and YouTube fishing, everybody has a YouTube page now. Everybody
Oh,
does. And so here's the thing. I think people saw John B and the Googans, whatever they want to call
mm-hmm.
themselves. Those guys are millionaires now, probably. And those guys are the OG guys,
Mm-hmm.
and they are the right age, right? They tackle their demographic, and they did one thing. They did it really well in the beginning. They were just grassroots, but now they've got professional editors. They got professional. They're a fishing show. They're an
Yes.
online fishing show, and they did it. Don't try to replicate it. It's too late now. You got to offer something different. And that's the problem with all the new YouTubers out here. They saw the success of those guys, but that happened 5, 6 years ago.
And they're kind
Now,
of not trying to do their own thing. They're just trying to, oh, this video got a bunch of views. I'll make one and title it just like it and see what I
yeah,
can get.
yeah,
It's tough for me. And I'll tell you the two best videos I've ever done are on Vexus boats. And I am blown away how many people has watched that. I've talked to the dealer I did those videos with, and he sold a couple boats because of it. But I really didn't gain that many subscribers off of it. When I gain subscribers, it's like if I do a video this week, I'm actually thinking about this is, 5 Ned rig baits you need this spring. I'll get a bunch of views off of it and I'll gain subscribers, but it's kind of hard for me to do those as opposed to live streams because I work all the time. I've got kids or
yep,
whatnot. And then, no offense to Matt and Tim, they're kind of the authority, and I never want them to think I did a video just because they did it or because they recommended a bait. I put it in there. There's going to be stuff I disagree with them, and that's okay. And they disagree with me, but I think a lot of that's the difference between a West Coast guy and a guy who fishes the Tennessee River impoundments. Um,
that's
and
crucial.
and I
Yeah,
really actually think their audience is geared more to that West Coast kind of deal. But there's a lot of guys here that really pay attention to what they say. Um, so I have a small niche, and I've tried to do like on the water fishing stuff, and I do those videos do okay. But I'm more of apt to just take my GoPro with me if I get a catch on this 6 cents bait or whatever it is, then I can save that. And so when I'm talking about, the robo net and how I like to fish it, I can just lay that over the top. And that's
yeah,
kind of where I'm going to go with my videos this year. I like doing vlogging at events and stuff. And I really enjoy doing a podcast where I can just talk. Um, but I don't get crazy amount of views on Baitman Raw. I mean, it's really listens. I get about 1,000 to 1,500, maybe 2,000, and I get about 100 or so downloads on Podbean. But I like having guests like you that are not, the KVDs and Iconellis of the world. One of those guys are hard to get a hold of, but people are kind of sick of guys wearing derby jerseys pushing certain stuff down their throat. They like the blue collar guy. That's why your reviews, people like those reviews because the average guy spending money, he doesn't want to listen to this guy that he's getting paid to say this. What's the guy that goes and spend his hard earned cash saying about something?
yeah. And I think that yeah, I think that's kind of where YouTube really shined, and I think that's why there was a major pushback when all those, I let's just use the Guggen Squad when they kind of became big deals. These guys that were professional fishermen are like, this is bullshit.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
still
and
do it.
Yeah, and so, but the problem is that I think a lot of people get into YouTube initially because they think that they have a special sauce. They look at these guys' videos and they say, I can replicate that video, but I'm more charismatic, or I've got better water to fish, or whatever it may be. But they don't realize it's work. And if you
Mm-hmm.
don't like doing it, like I've gotten burned out on YouTube so many times, and once a year I get burned out, and I won't make videos for 2 months, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not doing this to make a living. Like it's great. Like I 150 bucks a month. Like ooh, like it ain't nothing. But like that's kind of like guys that first start out. They're like, oh wait, now I have to have 1,000 subscribers and
Mm-hmm.
and all this watch time. And I'm like, yeah, but if you're making videos because you want to watch them, like I'm guilty. I watch my own videos. I hear people like, I don't watch my own videos.
I do it. My
I do.
kids, every time I get done on a live stream, they're like, I want to go. I want to watch a bait show. My little girl should just scream, bait show, bait show, bait show. That's what she wants to watch. And I like that. If my little girl loves it, that's all I really care about.
Yeah, and I go back too, and I look at them. There's not much you can do with the fishing channel
No.
if you're doing live fishing. And so, kind of going back to Gene, I think Gene lost a big piece of his niche by getting away from just doing the teaching videos and the instructional videos because he still is very good at it.
Mm-hmm.
There's another guy named Tackle Junkie who
I watch him from time to time.
yeah, he's I think he's a Midwest guy. He's got his niche, but if you look at his subscriber count and what he's been doing for so long, he doesn't get the views that some of the other guys because he doesn't do
Right.
sensationalism content, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
honest content, but that's how you are too. And that's how I am, and it's just I don't want to clickbait anybody. I just don't. It's stupid. In fact, I got pissed the other day when a big YouTuber did it. I even commented on him. I go, "You're a son of a bitch! I can't believe you did that. You don't need." Yeah, I
Yeah.
said, "You don't need to do that. Don't
Right.
say something stupid. Like I'll watch it because I want to watch you because I like watching you fish. Don't trick me."
I ran into a lot of people at the Bassmaster Classic, some great people and some smaller YouTubers and stuff. And I ran into a guy, and he has about 1,500 subs. When I first met him, he had like 50. And it was, of course, our first conversation was, "Hey, we just sub my channel, blah, blah, blah." Didn't even know me. And that's fine. I mean, we had a great conversation about cameras, and I told him, "This is what you need to do." And I'm the world's worst about telling you to do something, and I don't do it. But he's been working his tail off for a year. And he said, "Man, I put out like 150 videos and I'm only up to 1,500 subs." I said, "Well, here's the deal. Growth is growth. And I subscribed to your channel. I didn't sub because you asked me to. I went and watched 2 or 3 videos and I liked your content. I see so many people on Facebook groups and, oh, you got to sub or Pro Angler sub me. I really need the subs." That I will sub you if I like your stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big misconception. Everyone thinks subs equals dollars. And if people are subscribing because you're begging them, they're not watching your stuff. I value the subscribers that watch my stuff and they comment a video, "Hey man, I like this bait," or "I never knew that about this technique. You earned my sub." That's the kind of stuff I like. Okay, I made a good video if people are doing that.
Yeah, I found you because you were doing these reviews on the 5 colors for spring and stuff. Like, was one of those videos like a year or two ago
Yeah,
or 3 years?
I just got a comment on that today. It was a bastard comment. It's like, "Hold the bait close to the camera. I can't see what it is." I'm like, "I did B-roll cutaways of that thing, bud. You didn't watch the whole video."
I had one guy the other day comment on one of my older low rants videos. I'm not a technical savvy when it comes to sonar and stuff like that, but he said, "Please do us all a favor," and I think everybody would agree is get to the point. I'm like, I just literally did an emoji of the middle finger back to the guy, and then I blocked his ass. I block people all the time that does
Oh,
stupid
I,
comments.
I've done that.
We've got a guy out here who has changed his name. It's always Brandon Fuller or it's Braden Fuller. He changes it and he harasses me and out west with Chris, who's a good friend of mine. And he just puts these comments, "You guys are fishing this wrong." But I'm like, "Fuck you," I don't
Yeah,
need your shit. I like if you're not doing this for the love of actually doing it because you either want to relive it as keep it as like a live document of your life, or you want to show your kids when they get older, or if you want to teach people, you have to have that desire to do it if you're going to do YouTube. And I think there's too many people that go out there and they're like, "I'm going to do YouTube," and they don't realize it's a lot of effort, and you get burnt out if you're not making any money because you think you're going to make money. And I don't know.
you're right. I
I
mean, $150 check. I mean, you can go wait tables and make more than that in a week. But
Mhm.
one, I like it, gives me something to do. Dude, I like to talk. I don't know if you've noticed. I just like to talk to people.
Yeah.
I'll talk to the camera. I do the live streams. I'm doing podcasts because I like to talk. It gets me out of my wife's hair just a little bit. Um, but if you're going into YouTube and you think, "Man, I'm going to kill it. I'm going to get 100,000 subscribers and I just be making it rain in the strip clubs," that ain't going to happen unless you get that viral video. But I've already seen it. Someone that's a friend of mine, they had a viral video, got almost 1 million views, and they went from like 3,000 subs to almost 30,000. And they keep putting videos out, and they get like 1,500, 2,000 views at most. because most of those subscribers just hit that button because maybe this dude put another viral video out, and
Yeah.
it just don't happen.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing is that I'd rather have someone watch my video and comment on it and not be a sub because they had a real genuine interest in learning, like they did a Google search, right?
Correct.
And they found it that way. Like I did a bunch of things for Feel Free Kayaks, no affiliation, and I've got like 30, 40,000 views in all of them. And I did 5 things that I like, 5 things that I hate. My review after 2 years, what happened when my hull cracked and all that stuff. People want to know that stuff, right? And like going back to what I was saying, live fishing videos, there ain't much you can do, not unless you're going down to the Amazon to fish for parawanas or whatever they're called, arowanas, and it's just there's not much you can do. It gets old and it gets stale, and you got to have a personality or whatever it may be. It's just you got to enjoy it for a different reason than looking for a paycheck.
Absolutely. Dude, we've been on for an hour and 37 minutes. It's almost, it is midnight where I'm at. Um, Matt, I really appreciate you joining Baitman Raw. Dude, you're welcome on here anytime. I think a good time to get back with you is around ICAST when all this new stuff starts hitting and we can pick out the dildos and the
Yeah.
duds. And man, ICAST ain't what it used to be either. So, but dude, from a Vol fan to a Georgia fan, I really appreciate having you on.
I appreciate it greatly. Thank you so much. I enjoyed this conversation thoroughly. So go dogs.
Absolutely, man. Go Vols.